Ray to buck the party line when need be. I think when off Liverpool people advocated to 25% tariff cut and the Equal Party opposed it, John was one of the people up there arguing in favour of the cut. So a brave politician. He developed, after his time in politics, the Australian Institute for Public Policy here in Perth, which then merged with the Institute for Public Affairs later in 1991. Now, I've arranged a special guest speaker tonight to go into a bit more detail than I have during this career. Now, being of the libertarian bent and being in WA, it's not often that you get much good coming from over it, particularly Canberra. We've had three AFL Premiership Cups, but otherwise, when something comes from the eastern states, it's usually carbon tax, mining tax, another tariff, or some kind of unwelcome intrusion. However, tonight we have a very welcome arrival here in the form of Mr. Rafe Champion. Now, Rafe is a bushman and a pioneer. He grew up on a dairy farm in Tasmania and studied agricultural science at the University of Tasmania. On graduation, he decided that he wanted to business line for him to address issues related to Wakunda. He found in time that the problem for Wakunda wasn't really a problem of food production and tended towards sociology, at which point he became an admirer of Popper. In time he moved into planning and research in fields of health, anti-discrimination and economic policy. He subsequently completed a master's degree in history and philosophy of science at the University of Sydney. Along the way, he encountered classical libertarianism, especially in Hayde's essay Why I'm Not Conservative. He claims to quote this essay's proof that it's no longer necessary to be a socialist to demonstrate you have a heart, even at the age of 20 years. Now, Rafe's contributed to both prominent Australian journalist sites, Introductory and Galaxy Files, and he's been an international champion of the philosophy of Popper, as I mentioned, as well as the Austrians, Hyde and Paul. His publications include reports, papers, reviews, books, and newsletters across a great variety of subjects, from cricket and boxing to science to political philosophy. Now, Rafe has a bit of history here with Mannkal. He was kicked off the Club Trotter website as a contributor when the other moderators found out that he'd met Lord Monkton at the famous or infamous Mannkal event that Get Up had a apoplectic fit about. So, ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to you tonight Rafe Champion. Yeah, please. Should we take a seat?
Well, thanks for that introduction. I think you've left me down a bit. I think you could have followed Ron's example and described me as Australia's foremost blogger. That, of course, described us for Coppo. Anyway, before talking about John Hyde's career, I'll just briefly mention how I first met John Hyde and also I first met Ron Manners. Well, I met John Hyde in 1987 when I was working at a rather short-lived think tank in Sydney called Centre 2000. And I was working on policy papers, and for some reason I decided, I heard that John was coming to town and I wanted to ask him some questions. And he said he'd had 20 minutes to spare between something or other and meeting John Howard. So I made a list of the questions, about 20 of them, and a piece of paper, and we met. I gave him the list of 20 questions. We got through the 20 questions in 15 minutes. So we had 5 minutes of chit-chat. And that was good. I had to put it back on that. We got on. We were both into the soil after all. So that was meeting John Hyde. As for reading Ron Manners, that happened in 2010 at the Mannkal Society meeting in Sydney. My first encounter was with a table with John's books on it. There's a book there with a price tag of $40. Gee, that's price. too close because on hello Rafe. I didn't actually, I forgot I had a big huge name tag on. That's about him, knows his name. and then he reached out and put a copy of the book in my hand. He said, Rafe, nothing gives me more pleasure than give out. I thought, oh God, the poor guy refused to give him away. Anyway, a few minutes later I went on my way, $40 lighter, but with a lot of happy reading that I think. So that reading was so happy that when I went fishing up the coast, I copied that book to my next to each of my fishing companions. So I thought that they surprised me with so much pace. Okay, getting back to the John Hyde Oration, the purpose of this is twofold. One of them, my purpose is quite simply to say thank you to John. The second reason is a broader agenda. That's an agenda of correcting a situation where the left and the ALP very effectively celebrate their pioneers and their leaders and their heroes. I'm not suggesting we should overdo it in the way that they do, but I think we could do a lot better about acknowledging, remembering, paying tributes to keeping the record alive about the people who have done good things to the non-Labor and non-left side of politics. Hence, I've nagged Ron to have a John Hyde Oration. Well, eventually he caved in and taken it all off. Here we are. But I think Ron and I have agreed that this needs to be the first part of the program. To do this, some kind of thing for other people, and perhaps even put together a collection of papers, especially for John and for any other people we think are worthy of it. Mind you, we're not being completely neglectful. There's Hal Colbatch's book on his father, Hal Colbatch. There's that book that Hal finished off writing about Bert Kelly. There's a Shan Memorial lecture, there's possibly a Clough lecture, isn't it? No. Anyway, the cupboard isn't completely bare. We'd like to see it better stocked. Okay, so before moving on again to John, I want to put two other people into the frame of this picture I'm painting tonight. The other two pictures, people in the frame, are Bert Kelly and Peter Walsh. Bert, of course, doesn't need much introduction. He's a key figure in the education development of the young John Hyde, and a critical link in the chain of libertarians and free traders, which you can trace back to forgotten people in the 1930s. In fact, I've even forgotten who they are. I know where to look them up, but they're just not names that trip off your tongue. And that's not good. Not good. Peter Walsh gets a mention here for three reasons. He's a Western Australian. You guys like to celebrate their local boys, not just the footballers. He was a farmer, salt of the earth, and most important, Peter Walsh demonstrated that you can get good policy making done on the other side of the road, the other side of the political road. We've forgotten that in recent years, but there hasn't been much good policy coming from that side of the road. But there's not going to be a bad day across the road if we can't get back to a situation that is decent policy being made on both sides of the house. Because in the same way as you can sometimes get good policy on both sides, you also get bad policy. So I'm not here to celebrate any particular side of politics. I'm here to celebrate classical liberalism, free traders, that body of work we represent, John Hyde represented with so much diligence and energy. So, I'm assuming, as I speak, without checking with John, by the way, John I wanted to assure John at least some of the things I say tonight are true, because I read them in his book. I can't assure that everything's true, because I haven't checked it. But I'm assuming that, John, your first loyalty was mostly with your farm. And that demonstrated when I phoned up some while ago to speak to you, telling you you can't actually talk to John until his son lets him go helping on the farm with the harvest. So this was actually a reversal of the usual farming situation when you have a middle-aged man still under the thumb of the old farmer who's going to get off the farm and take over. This is a role reversal of that case. Anyway, despite this loyalty to the land and the farm, John had other loyalties. And I'd like to think of those other broader interests demonstrated by my own father, an ethos of community service, doing stuff that needs to be done. And this episode that really stuck in my mind about this happened when I was about 6 years old. And my father went out and put a shovel in the back of the car, and he drove down the mile of Champion's Lane, gravel main road, and he filled in a big pothole with the shovel, getting loose gravel off the side of the road to bring the pothole. It's on blind corners, I couldn't see if you hit it. And I thought this was silly. It's far too tactful to say that, but just said the council workers are supposed to do this kind of thing. And my father said, any number of cars to break their springs from this hole before the council workers get around to fix it. So that seems to me to sum up possibly John's attitude towards going off the farm, fixing up potholes outside. Potholes that he would have found in the local government initially, and then moving on to the national scene, where he found more potholes. And of course, under the tutelage of Bert Kelly, he found the potholes were probably different from the ones that he originally had in mind. He said, if you got a funny thing in his book about Bert Kelly had to spend a lot of his time with his head in Samuelson. I think it was a terrible shame he had to spend so much time reading Samuelson, because Samuelson he was a mathematical economist, he was a Keynesian, and he was heavily in the big government and welfare state. And he also predicted right up to the fall of the war that the Russian-Soviet economy was going strong and rapidly overfall of the US. So I don't regard him as the worst economist who ever won the Nobel Prize. It's a pity that Bert spent so much time learning economics in that book, but of course Bert was far too close to the real world to be fooled by Samuelson. So it just meant that everything that Bert achieved, whatever he did achieve, whatever John achieved, had to be done in the face, in the defiance of the trend of economic thinking, one other phrase, and not only the trend of economic thinking, but the trend of Australian politics, apropos of the role of government and tariffs, central wage fixing, all of that. So they really had to push a very big stone up a very steep hill. There's a beautiful passage on protection in Keith Hancock's book, Australia, which he wrote in 1930. Put it on my website. It's so good. He wrote, protection in Australia has been more than a policy. It has been a faith and a dogma. Its critics during the second decade of the 20th century dwindled into a despised and detested sect suspected of nursing anti-national heresy. Johns. For protection is interwoven with almost every strand of Australia's democratic nationalism. It is a policy of power, professes to be a policy of plenty, promises to the Australians the industries which are necessary in time of war, and also the enjoyments which are desirable in time of peace. When on democratic politics develops a theory of compensations under which the tariff elaborates itself, under an extensive tariff, one industry's protection becomes increasingly visible as another industry's cost. sooner or later that industry will be tempted to demand protection for itself. And there's a nice little quote following that. It might have been expected that the primary industries which produced for export would have revolted against this system. Instead, the weaker of them have adopted the policy of the French noblemen who declared while the monarchy was going bankrupt, while others hold out their hands, I hold out my hat. So that was the mentality that Bert and John had to push against. So I think that, and of course they did not make rapid progress. They did not make rapid progress. In my hanging file at home, labelled New Right, I've got cuttings out of the press from 1986. 1986, the reform agenda was practically happening, about to. And yet, from both sides of politics, the most scurrilous things was being said about the economic growth. The New Right. Terrible things. I should have brought some to quote. But the words fascist were being used. And that type of language. And that was in 1986. This was after John and Bert and John were long gone from politics, for that party politics in 1986. The road was long and the road was hard. I've mentioned John's book Dry, and I'm personally very grateful for that book, because years ago, previously before you wrote it, I identified a need for a comprehensive story that tells about the Bible of good economic policy. Dead. I have to tell the story of those people whose names I've forgotten. They go back to the early on. And anyway, the point is, John wrote the book. I never needed to write the book. That saved me a heap of work in my retirement. Now, it's a bigger book than the one which is produced in the form of paper. It's twice as big, I think. And the whole thing is on the IPA website, if you know where to find it. I found it last week. It's still there, and I'm going to make sure it's prominently displayed on my website. So you'll make sure it's on your website. It's a full record. It's got lots of stuff, like the short story, December 2000, where I work, short while, which is not in the paper, published version. So the whole story is terribly important. I mean, poor old Goldbacks, I think, had to put the axe through it to cut it down to a size for the publisher to print it. But the full story is we need the full story. We don't want to sawn off the story. We want the whole story. There it is. Thank you for that, John. You saved me a heap of work. So I couldn't have done it. I couldn't have done it as well, but John was there. He probably like it. So
news to me, I didn't know. I didn't know it was there.
You didn't know it was on the website?
No.
Yeah, well, I found it about 15 years ago, and then for years I couldn't find it. But then I found it again last week. It comes and goes. Anyway, we're just about reached the end of the story, because the story is that John kept on. There were still potholes. Okay, he didn't go back on the farm. But no, as mentioned, he started his own think tank in Perth, and then he worked with IPA. He did hundreds of columns and he persisted with the work of advocacy, education, and policy development. And that activity is it's critical, absolutely crucial. Nothing will happen without the work it's done, policy development, advocacy, and education. Now, John didn't travel alone, of course. He had extremely wonderful helpers. No, John was always a wonderful helper, because they were good people in his local think tank, people in IPA, and of course he's always been around helping without the CIS. So, I just wanted to end up in the final page, full version, Dry, which is on the net, RPA website. That's it. I'm so pleased to have the privilege of coming all the way to Perth. It's lovely getting to Perth, meeting all the lovely people along the bus, learn about one of the Nobel Prize winners. It's a great experience to talk with Mannkal. He gets to the monk that doesn't turn up, create trouble for me. So thanks for having me, thanks for listening, and thanks to John for making it worthwhile.
Thanks, Rafe. You put much emphasis on me. There were a hell of a lot of people in this team. I've attended a few funerals in my time, and I've noticed that the deceased usually acquires a few virtues that you haven't noticed. And just in case you went overboard, I put together a list of about 30 names of other people that were involved in this fight with me, some of them braver and better than I was. And Steve Lusher did that. I got belted around the ears for it. There were a lot of us involved. And thanks for being overly kind, mate.
Well, I guess the part of this exercise is to push out the other people. You should be reminded about the other people. Okay, I forgot about these people in the 30s. Anything I write from now on, I'll make sure I make bring up people in the 30s. Anything I write about modern times, I'll bring up at least be aware of 30 people on your list. Anything that I write beyond them as a blog post will have 30 names in it as opposed to one.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Couple for presence speaks here at Mannkal Prosperity Club. Thank you for making your way over to Perth. I'm going to hold that one underneath. It's not supported. Prosperity Club. Thank you for making your way over to Perth. I'm going to hold that one underneath. It's not supported. There we are. Just a couple of good bottles of WA Red and our own brand of Mannkal as well.
Let's not be you. From 1788 to the present day, a compilation put together by Jeffrey Lehman, Robert Gray, two very fine conservative poets. It's not just poetry, it's got the life stories of all the poets. And I brought this to give to John Hyde so you can take something home in your hand.
Just bless you, Rafe.
And to wind up this evening, I'd just like to ask your manners.
I just want to say that's the book we thank John so much for labouring over it. I know it was a long task, but John, without this book, that story of the period and the achievements of the guys could possibly be lost to history. And I'm one of the lucky guys. Timing of all this was when I was really active, very active in business, and I gained the benefit of seeing the Australian economy set free. And it would never have happened without the guys. So John, we guys at Mannkal Foundation are honoured to have you working with you. We're honoured to work alongside you. And I would like
30 friends.
and your 30 friends. Now, it's also John's birthday. It was on Saturday. So I think we start off by singing happy birthday. Okay. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear John. Happy birthday to you. Hooray! Hooray! Hooray!
Okay, I'll flush it now.
Just to embarrass you further, John, we're going to pull down your birthday card up there and lay it on the board table for everyone to sign with this special birthday card signing event.
I think that takes us pretty much to the end of formal proceedings.